Welcome to the Everyday PM podcast, the podcast where we discuss project management principles for your everyday life. My name is Ann Campea, and I'll be your host today. I am also the founder of the Everyday PM. And today we're tackling one of the most critical periods in any project manager's career. It's the first 90 days. Whether you're stepping into your first PM role or you're transitioning into a new organization, those initial 3 months can make or break your success. So I am thrilled to have Mukhtar Gadiri joining us, who is ranked the #1 PM in Canada, is a PM career coach with a 67,000 plus LinkedIn network, and helps companies hire PMs who actually deliver results. I feel like I should be yelling that introduction because it's just incredible. If anyone knows what separates PMs who thrive from those who struggle in those crucial first 90 days, it's Mukhtar. So welcome to the podcast. Please take a brief moment to introduce yourself to our audience.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, and I really appreciate that very warm introduction. I feel like I should be coming here more often. But yeah.
I will be your hype woman for sure.
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'm Mukhtar Kadiri and I am a PM career coach. So I help, PMs anything in terms of, their career. We particularly focus on helping PM land high-paying PM roles, so 100 to 300K, and also when they get into those roles, how do they now thrive and succeed? So that's me in a nutshell. I've been in the PM space for a long time. I've worked in oil and gas, in real estate, in tech, in healthcare as well. And I've been a PM. I've led PMs, and I have led departments, and I've worked in over 20 countries. So that's me in a nutshell.
I'm going to throw already a curveball question at you. What led you to, with all of that wealth of knowledge from your career spanning across different industries, I'm sure different experiences, what led you to where you're at now in terms of being a career coach for project managers?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a very good question. So, I guess okay, maybe I can start with a story.
Sure.
I went to I went to Texas Tech University. So I lived in Texas for a while. Um, and when I started studying, I was studying electrical engineering and computer science.
Hmm.
But for some reason, I wasn't really getting it then. So I decided I'm going to switch to petroleum engineering. All right. And then by the time I graduated, I ended up with this mix of computer science, electrical engineering, and petroleum engineering.
Yeah.
And this will come in handy, at some point in the story. But anyway, so I had reached the end of my university time, and I noticed that many of my peers were getting offers while we were in university. So some were getting like 6 to 7 offers. I couldn't get an offer to save my life.
Oh, wow.
I graduated, I was now like doing, I was working at Blockbuster for those of you who remember what Blockbuster is.
I
So I
do.
was doing I was doing like menial work, and I couldn't quite get into corporate. And then, somebody advised me to just change the name on my resume. So I changed it from Mukhtar to Mark. And when I
Interesting.
did that, I got a call.
Wow.
And then I, did an interview. They told me to come over to Houston. For the second interview. And before I went, because, just for context, then I was living in Dallas, right? So
Hmm.
I drove down to Houston for the interview. Before I got back to Dallas, they called me, saying that I had gotten my offer, right? So I was like,
Great.
okay, this is interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
this is
you know,
interesting.
yeah,
What a
so I
use
had to
case.
yeah, so I had to, change my name. And so I was now like Mark in the company. And whenever people
Hmm.
will call me that, like I would cringe, because I felt like
Hmm.
a part of me had to be suppressed
Yes,
to be called that. But I gradually transition people back to Mukhtar because I really love my name. My name means the chosen,
absolutely.
so and I really love my name. My dad named me after his one of his close friends. But yeah, so really great job. I was grateful for that. But one of the things that really stuck out to me then was like, okay, why was this so difficult for me to get a job, right?
Right.
And then, then I was in Texas. I started working in Texas. I got transferred over to the Middle East. And it was amazing. Like I was working on, like really amazing projects, cutting edge of technology, and I got promoted. I was working on projects before I knew it, before I knew what
Hmm.
project management was. And then yeah, I got promoted. I was like, I was managing our entire Middle East and Africa region. So, about 20 countries. Um, anyway, long story short, and then I got laid off. So when I got laid off, and then I was in Dubai at that point in time. And
Wow.
when you get laid, because my stay in the country was tied to my employment, right? So when you're
Right.
laid off, like you have 30 days to pack up and leave, right?
Right.
So, it was me, my wife, my pregnant wife, my little kid, and we just had to pack up and leave.
Oh,
And then
goodness.
we moved to Canada, right? So moving from the desert to Canada in February in the middle of the winter, right?
Oh,
So
gosh.
what a, what a change. But it came to Canada, I didn't know anybody and had to now start over again from the scratch, like building my networking. And
Hmm.
I was trying to get into the job market in Canada. Um, and it was difficult. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
again, somebody gave me that advice. Why don't you change your name?
Oh,
But
gosh.
yeah, but this time I refuse. I'm like, I can't do that. Like hats off to people that can do that, but I'm not gonna do that this time. So I struggled, learned about how to navigate the job market, how to build my network from scratch. Now, eventually I ended up landing not one but two offers. And so I went from being jobless needing to pay the bills and all of that now to like, okay, what do I do? I need to decide between two offers, right?
Yeah.
So I think like that background story is very central to why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. So it's my experience, and on top of that, like I just really love teaching. So even when I
Yeah.
was in corporate, like I used to just I enjoy like breaking things down, clarifying, and just making sure people see, just I'm an educator at heart, right?
Absolutely.
So that's I know that was a bit of a long story, but
No.
that's why I do what I'm.
Not at all. Thank you for being so open and willing to share that story with us. I think that story in itself deserves its own podcast episode. That was really incredible. And I can hear the authenticity in the journey in terms of I'm sure the amount of resilience and persistence that required you to kind of just keep your head in the game and make sure that you were staying true and authentic to yourself while still pursuing what your goals were. So, all of that to say, thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate it. So, let's talk a little bit more about, you're a project manager now. I like the transition from hearing about your journey because we'll transition now into you've got offers, you've accepted an offer, you're going to be a PM and or you're already a PM and you're going to transition to a new organization. So Mukhtar, when a PM walks into a new role on day one, whether it's a transitional role or a entirely new project manager role for someone, what are the 2 to 3 most critical things they should focus on in their first 30 days? We'll go 30, 60, 90. We'll do it like that. So in their first 30 days to set themselves up for success.
Yeah, I know, and I think that. So there are a couple of things that you mentioned. So I think it's nice to have that demarcation, the demarcation 30, 60, 90. But, like in a lot of cases, that will be blurred. It's not like you're really going to have that, okay, phase one, phase two, and phase three, right? And also
Right.
it could depend on the context, so just wanted to just put that caveat initially. But when you get in, one of the things that I coach and I will do if I were in that situation is to just understand what success looks like. Like that is your North Star, right? And like that is easier said than done, right? Because even
Hmm.
sometimes the key players don't even know what success looks like. So sometimes you have to sort
True.
of pull it out from them and articulate it back to them. And, sort of align, right? So that in itself is an endeavor, to
Yes.
yeah. But that is the first thing that you want to use, that you want to understand what success looks like. Now, how do you now do that? You now need to start meeting with the right people, the key players who will be able to help you, like what's the word now? Sort of give you the clues. Like it's kind of like
Sure.
you're trying to piece together a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
So one of the very first people that you wanna meet obviously is your manager. So like that is probably going to be the most important relationship in your. I mean, I think your relationship with your manager is probably the most important relationship in your life. One of the most, because
Yeah.
your that relationship affects your personal life. If you have a toxic manager, that bleeds into your personal life, and everybody else is affected. So it's very important that that is right. Uh,
100%. Absolutely.
right. So one of the first things that you want to identify key players. So your manager, what does success look like to your manager? And one thing that I should mention here is I think a lot of times when we have these conversations, we go at it in a sort of dry, clinical, logical way. Like, what are your top challenges? What are your priorities? And a lot of times, like, people will be able to just mention things, but you want to get to the heart of, like, what is your main pain and what is your main frustration? Because some people, like, and you see this in a lot of companies, like, they have their goals that
Hmm.
sound nice on paper, but what is actually keeping them up at night is there's a bit of a discrepancy, right? So you want to
Right.
really follow the emotion, so to speak. Like, what is it that's keeping them up at night, that's frustrating them, that's, top of mind? And that is very important, right? And sometimes they're the same thing, but in many cases they're not, right?
Yeah.
So because when you understand that, you really understand where attention is, right? Because
Hmm.
number one, you can use that to, I mean, you can use that to better communicate, right? Because you know what people really care about, and you can use that to persuade, but you can also use that to serve as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, like, people have pain points, and I see the project manager role as a service, it's like way of service basically, right? So how can I make your life better? How can I make your work life better? And it's by identifying the pain points, the main frustrations, and what's keeping them up at night. That's how you can do that. So, to answer your question, one of the first things that you want to do is that you want to go in there and understand what success looks like. And that begins by meeting with key players. So I'm a big fan of one-on-ones.
Hmm.
Um, so one-on-ones with your manager, and also recurring one-on-ones, right? So with your manager, and then your manager can point you to the next person that you should speak to, and like that. Key stakeholders, people above you, below you, lateral on, in the org chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be what I would start working on in the first
I
few
was
days.
go I was going to ask you because you said I love that. In terms of the questions that you should be asking, sometimes they can feel very clinical or sterile. So you did say something around like talking to your manager about what does good look like or something to that effect. Do you have any advice in terms of what types of questions would prompt that type of response from your manager?
Yeah, so there are several ways to do it. I mean, obviously, you want to ask the question in a way that's natural, and because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like, project management is really very you're successful based on the quality of the relationships you build, right?
Right.
So something to the effect you want to ask questions that elicit and that make them safe to to tell you the truth about what's going on, right?
Sure.
And it could be I tried this one time. If you had a magic wand, like, what would you want to be
Ah,
done? And
I
when I
like
did that,
that.
I did that exercise in an interview at one point in time. Like, it was a panel interview, and it was like a cathartic experience for many of them. They were like,
That's
"Thank."
so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was almost because it's like you give them a chance to just, all right. It's almost like you give them a chance to play and to be honest.
Right.
right? And that's like valuable because if I had magic wand, like this is what I would want to go away. So that could be one, but I did, I'm just gonna stress it. You want to make sure that you say it in an authentic way and not like,
Sure.
you just read it on ChatGPT and you are, yeah. So that could be one, or what would you say is really top of mind for you right now? What's keeping you up at night?
Sure.
What are your main frustrations? And also the classical, what are your top priorities? And then I think also the follow-up questions are important, right? Because
Hmm.
a lot of times some people would just tell you like the first thing might not necessarily be what it actually is. You need to sort of drill down, right? And one thing that I like to tell people is you want to go in there like you want to go in there, you want to put on the hat of a consultant, right? So you're going in
Sure.
there your experience, you have the skills and experience. So you're going in there almost like a discovery. It's a fact-finding mission, and you're asking follow-up questions, and you're trying to really get to the heart of it, right? So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was super helpful. So we've connected with our boss. We've had these really great, meaningful conversations. You've spoken with authenticity and asking the questions to get your manager or leader to kind of divulge what essentially they're looking for and what good looks like. So here we are, a few weeks into the role. I won't say 60 days since we don't necessarily want a timestamp to the concrete degree of the day. So you've built these relationships. You're trying to build credibility at this point in your role. Outside of your manager being the one to identify who you should be meeting with and or who really matters in that circle for you as a PM, what's your framework for doing that? What's your framework for identifying who matters most and essentially how to build that trust quickly without coming across as, unauthentic, inauthentic, or even self-serving? Because early on, people still don't really know you, right? So that could probably be the case too. This person, all they want to do is meet with me and try to get ahead, sort of scenario. So how do you kind of break that barrier?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. And there's one interesting story that I'm going to share. And I think it sort of speaks to this point. So there was this project that I was leading. So basically, prior to this, I was on the bench. So they had cut me from a project because the client wanted to cut costs, and there was somebody who was more experienced on the project. So I was on the bench. So now and for those of you that have worked in consulting, when you're on the bench, the time is ticking, right? So
Yeah,
you have to be useful. And I was really anxious and just waiting for this next project. So I got assigned to this next project, and it was clear. All right, this is the main stakeholder. The person was called the contract holder. All right, so this is so I thought this was my main sponsor. So I went and I met with him. Okay, and he laid out the plan. Like, okay, you should go talk to these people. And I started to just, move forward and execute.
yeah,
Right. And, I wanted to really prove myself and all of that. Now, then I met with the stakeholder. So my company is the client and my company is the consultant and they are the client,
got
right?
it.
So I met with somebody on the client side who was not the main sponsor. And then like it was such an unexpected, like I just thought I was going there to meet another stakeholder. And what that meeting ended up being like for like I've never been sort of yelled at or like taking a verbal beating in corporate. Like this was the first time. And of course, like this was overseas as well. So, there are different norms
Sure,
and
sure.
all of that, right?
Yeah.
So and like it was a 30-minute meeting of just me being like, I guess, getting a beating.
Oh no.
And and then I left. And so what I understood from that was that she was actually the power holder,
Got
right?
it.
So when I looked at the org chart, like the other person, and like that person seemed like he was in charge, but she was
Hmm.
actually the person in charge. So one of the things that you want to
Wow.
do is that you can look at the org chart, but you want to make sure that you actually try to listen and look for who really has power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not necessarily, it doesn't always translate, right? So, so now with this project, I was already, like I started out, I had to like rebuild relationship and just reassess my whole assessment of the whole project, right? So I, started like having regular one-on-ones with that. What's really success? What does success look like for you? Who do you
Sure.
think are the important people I need to meet with? I met with all of them, understood them. Like I'm taking notes, gathering what's important to them. What do they want to see, in order for them to consider this project successful? So I gathered all of that and I'm always reporting back to her, like, this is what I'm gaining, this is what I'm seeing, identifying themes and all of that. Long story short, I ended up winning her over.
Of
And
course.
like that was, there are these very strong personalities, and it's usually just easier to just win them over. So when she was when we were on opposite sides, like it was such a huge obstacle. But when she was on
Hmm.
my side, it was amazing. Like, she was like a force for me, and she ended up being a mentor. And because of that, like the project was so successful, my company won like back-to-back multi-million-dollar contracts. And that like served my career, so it was just a virtual cycle from there. Like,
Yeah.
it's easier to just win her over, right? So anyway, long story short, like when you go in, you want to make sure that you really understand, the power dynamics, the politics and all of that. And not to go in there and play dirty, but just to understand how to sort of navigate. Okay.
Right, right. It's interesting, right? Because folks can, and I didn't get this out of your story. I'm just thinking based on your story and my experiences here is that stakeholders can really suss out inauthentic and
Right.
disingenuous conversations and people. And as much as you might think that it's not coming across, maybe you're trying to mask that behind
Mhm.
your intentions. We can figure it out, I feel like.
Right.
So and I, again, by no means is this a result, this comment a result of the story you just shared. I'm just thinking in terms of folks who are really trying to come across as authentic and genuine in your intentions. Make sure
Mhm.
they really are your intentions, right? That you're not trying
Right.
to take from others and or misinterpreting what your goals are there. But
Right.
because I think that can come across pretty quickly. In the case of yours, it's just it sounds like you just didn't know which stakeholder was the one really with the power and the influence, and it ended up being
Right.
somebody else.
Right. Right. No, for sure. And just to that point of authenticity, I think yeah, it's a very important point. Like you want to, yeah, you don't want to come across as somebody with ulterior motives, and it's easy for
Yeah,
people to just smell that, and sniff that out. So I think what really helps is, again, just back to this mentality of like, how can I be of service?
yeah,
And then it's like starting with their main pain points of frustration, and I think that's why I really enjoy this profession, is because, like, when I'm of service, it's very fulfilling, because people have this
absolutely.
this frustration. So I think when I approach it like that, like they have these problems, they have these frustrations, how can I just help them? And I think that comes across like it's almost like
Yeah,
it's your problem and I want to see how I can help. And
absolutely.
I think like that sort of takes care of the, do I have ulterior motives? And I think, this is also a mistake that I see people, because I think some PMs approach the job as, okay, this is more like they're coming at it like a commander, or
Yeah.
like, like, this is my thing and I want to get this to the end, right? So, you know, I think you can approach it like that, but you can also approach it like, all right, this is our thing and we have these problems. How can I help you people get it
Yeah.
to the end? And I think, it might be a subtle difference in mindset, but I think it has very different outcomes. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just that question alone, how can I help you, signals you're there for supporting other roles, supporting the project itself. Yeah, that's really very insightful. Thank you, Mukhtar. So let's go along this path now. We're approaching our 90 days. I'm going to do that in quotes because obviously every PM is different. You might get there a little bit later, you might get there a little bit sooner. So you've been at this company in this role for a little bit. What should a successful project manager have accomplished to prove they can deliver? And how would you define and communicate that kind of like, hey, I've got some wins under my belt at this point, in a way that feels like you're building momentum for the future and less of what we were just talking about in terms of that, your intentions were nefarious in a different way. But how do
Right.
you define that? How do you communicate those and show that you are delivering results?
Yeah, I think this is going to matter, on a case by case basis. But one thing that I would say is, as you're going through your first 90 days, you're basically doing a listening tour, and
Hmm.
you're listening actively for, things that are coming up again and again, right? So you probably have like this bank of, you know, notes that you've taken and things that are coming up. Um, and you're identifying themes and all of that. So one thing that you want to do is that you want to look for what I call low lift, high impact wins,
Great.
right? So these are things that, because one of the key things to your question of how do you build momentum, like people want to see quick wins, right?
Yeah,
And it's not just quick wins, it's not just, just being busy, but it's like things that actually maybe move the needle. So low lift, high impact wins. And there are several, and it doesn't have to be really monumental. So I and I can share this with your listeners. Like I have a library
that'd be
of
great.
of different types of, so there are like about six types. There is you have insight wins, visibility wins,
Oh, yeah.
relationship wins, system wins, influence wins, and execution wins. And
Wow.
maybe I can just mention a couple.
Sure.
So
Yeah, please.
for insight wins, you can create maybe a snapshot of what we know versus what we don't know. So as you know, because sometimes you might be brought into a project where there's just a lot of it's a big mess. And you're sort of trying to help them figure things out. So as you're doing that, it's like, okay, this is what we know versus this is what we don't know. Even just that simple, it could be like a one-page document like that goes a long way. Because
Yeah.
people feel like, okay, at least, things are beginning to make sense.
Yeah.
And then you can also, okay, this is what we know, this is what we don't know. Okay, what do we need to prioritize that right now? So maybe in the what we don't know, let's take this for the next 2 weeks and let's explore. Like, so even like that is a very, very um quick win that you can do, right?
Absolutely.
That you
Yeah.
can produce. Another thing is maybe just identifying recurring friction problems. Like, you've been speaking and you're hearing, okay, this coming up again and again and again.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the organization hasn't had the opportunity or the time for somebody to actually go around and sort of do that listening and to just so you coming in, you're actually doing a service, like you're sort of listening to everybody and identifying themes. Like in a lot of cases, that has never been done before. Right.
Yeah.
So these are like insights that you can do. Another thing is maybe just naming risks that nobody has quite put to words. So,
Nice.
reading between the lines. So these are things that, and there are many more, and, we can share this. Visibility wins, maybe, sorry, I'm just reading from a list
No,
right
you're
now.
good.
Um, yeah, so visibility, it could be sending like, updates, like
Yeah.
status updates in a way that's easy to understand because in a lot of cases, leadership doesn't have visibility into what's really going on. So being able to just produce something in a way that makes sense to leadership
Mm-hmm.
and also to the people doing the work, like that's an example of a visibility win. You also have relationship wins where it's like, um, just making sure that you meet with one-on-ones regularly with people, like I mentioned. System wins, establishing like decision logs, for example, because a lot of times people make decisions and
Yeah.
nobody knows, so that could be an example, or just building a high level timeline. Like that's maybe what I would call a system win, and on and on. And so I have a library of like about maybe 60 wins, and it's not for you to go through every one of them, but it's to say, okay, actually, this is something that I can do
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we are focused on, oh, what's the one, like I want to achieve this milestone, but there are many things that you can do that would actually create momentum. And a lot of small wins like that would really, number one, establish your credibility. And then it will also create momentum for you to, to lead the project to the end.
Extremely thought-provoking and I think super helpful, especially for project managers who are likely just starting in their careers in terms of, okay, I started this role, what do I do now? And if they're not getting that kind of level of detail from either their leader or the stakeholders surrounding them, this framework itself that you just shared is very, very insightful and very helpful for those who are just trying to figure out where those success factors can be drawn from. So that was great. Thank you, Mukhtar. It's like, as you're saying them, I'm thinking, and maybe you feel the same way. I love what we do as project managers. All the things that you listed there in terms of these are low hanging fruit. These are things that you can come in. These are things that probably an organization has thought about, but simply hasn't had the person in house with the right mindset and the skill set to be able to do that for the organization. So it's so cool what we do because we go in there and we do all these things and they think we're like wizards or something because we
Right.
can go in there and do all this cleanup and accomplish all these things very quickly. So that was
Right.
really, really nice. I loved that list. It was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, no, and as you're saying that, one thing I just remember one time when I was brought into a project, and a lot of times we don't realize that we're actually what we do is not something that many people are good at, right? And I would just give you an example. So I was in this project with this guy who was like a staff engineer, so he's like a senior engineer and just worked at like like the New York Times, CNN, like he's a pretty senior engineer. And in this project, I was just asking questions like, okay, um, somebody mentioned like, when do you think that we'll be able to have that done? And okay, do you have what you need? Like stuff like that. And I
Hmm.
think maybe that question was coming up again and again. And this engineer was like, after the meeting, he came to me one-on-one. He was like, thank you so much. It's been a while that I've um seen somebody display that skill, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, because basically, like those questions that just come up naturally, you are bringing structure to this very, very complex thing. Like, when do you think simple question, like, when do you think that will be done? It forces
Hmm.
people to like assess, and you're now giving a bit of clarity and structure to this big thing.
Yes.
So I just thought that was pretty interesting. Like, I think we take for granted a lot of the things that we do. Like, there's some of these things that are ingrained in us,
Yes.
like that discipline to execute and to be able to ask questions that many people are not thinking about, and all of that, and to identify dependencies and connections here and there. I think like this is something that we do naturally that we might overlook, but it's a very fundamental and important skill to an organization. Yeah.
What a great story and what a great way to wrap up our conversation today. I feel like, Mukhtar, you've laid out the playbook for project managers who are either stepping into the role for the first time or transitioning to a new organization. I myself have started a new role, so this has been helpful for me too in terms of transitioning into a new industry. So I'm going to take some of the notes from what we just discussed today selfishly and use them for myself. But folks that are listening, I hope you do too. So Mukhtar, if folks want to continue the conversation with you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I usually share free advice. And yeah, yeah. So that I think that's the best way to do that. You just connect with me on LinkedIn, and yeah, every day I share free advice, apart from Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, huge network. I'm incredibly grateful to you for sharing with our audience everything that you know and being willing to continue the conversation with them. It's truly been an honor having you on the podcast. So, for folks that are listening, you can subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcasting platforms. Let us know what you thought of this episode. I would love to have Mukhtar back, so make sure you're telling us that we want him back for a conversation. And for those folks that want to follow me, I'm also on LinkedIn and Campea. And thank you all for joining us for this installment of the Everyday PM podcast. And until next time, take care.